I had owned this bridge long before the neighborhood was ever built. It was the only private crossing connecting my ranch to the main road. Then the HOA approved construction for 28 homes behind it. That was when my quiet property became their access route. At first, I didn't object to the new homes. I simply told the developers they couldn't treat my bridge like a public road. They assured me everything had been approved by the HOA, but nobody had ever asked me for permission. Week after week, construction continued behind my property. More houses appeared, and more workers started using my bridge. Heavy trucks crossed it every morning and afternoon. I warned them that the bridge was never designed for that traffic. Then the first concrete trucks started rolling across. The bridge shook every time one passed over it. I contacted the HOA and told them the structure needed an engineering inspection. Instead, they told me I was responsible for keeping their access open. I reminded her that the bridge was on my private land. She insisted the new community needed permanent access. I asked her to show me the document granting that right. She couldn't produce one. So I pulled out the original property survey. The boundary line was unmistakable. The entire bridge sat inside my property, and the HOA had no ownership interest in it. She looked at the survey and still refused to accept it. She said the HOA had already promised residents permanent access. I told her promises couldn't change property boundaries. She replied that the HOA would handle the bridge itself. A few days later, I found contractors inspecting my bridge. Nobody had contacted me for permission. They were preparing to increase the traffic capacity. That was the moment I realized the situation was getting serious. I hired my own licensed structural engineer to inspect the bridge. He spent hours checking every beam and support. His conclusion was simple. The bridge needed major repairs before heavy traffic. I immediately sent the report to the HOA. The HOA finally admitted the bridge needed work. But instead of discussing who should pay, they sent me an invoice. They claimed the bridge existed for their community's benefit. Then they ordered me to repair it. The invoice demanded that I pay for the entire repair. It included damage caused by years of construction traffic. I looked at the number and then looked at the bridge. That was when I decided to fight the demand properly. That night, I gathered every document connected to property. The original deed, surveys, maintenance records, and engineering report were all there. Every document told the same story. The bridge belonged to me. I took everything to a property attorney. He carefully reviewed the boundary lines and historical records. Then he smiled and pointed to one sentence in the original deed. The HOA had no authority over my bridge. The next morning, I posted a clear private property notice. I also delivered the attorney's response to the HOA. I wasn't blocking anyone out of spite. I was simply protecting property that legally belonged to me. The HOA president arrived before noon. She read the notice twice without saying a word. Then she demanded to know who gave me the right to make that decision. I simply pointed to the property deed. A professional surveyor came out to mark the exact boundary. The results matched my original survey perfectly. The bridge was entirely inside my property line. There was no mistake to argue about. The HOA board finally had to explain the situation to its residents. They learned that their promised access depended on a privately owned bridge. The repair invoice they had sent me suddenly became a serious problem, because they had never actually owned the structure. I eventually agreed to repair the bridge on my own terms. The work was completed by licensed professionals, but the HOA had to stop treating my property like community infrastructure. The bridge remained mine. The final agreement made everything clear. The HOA could request access, but it couldn't claim ownership. Future heavy construction traffic required proper permission, and every repair responsibility had to be agreed upon in writing. 28 homes were built behind my bridge, but building a neighborhood never gave the HOA ownership of my land. They learned that a private property line doesn't disappear just because development surrounds it, and that bridge still stands on my side of the line. Like, subscribe and tell us, where are you watching from?